Here's what you should be avoiding food-wise if you are experiencing anxiety. Anxiety, again, is a judgment on how you're feeling, but it also is an upper. So when we feel anxiety, we feel excited or stimulated. We're overstimulated, and a lot of things in our lives create stimulation. Foods can be one of those things. If we're looking to decrease or manage and tolerate the judgment of anxiety and how that feels in our bodies and our minds, we might want to take a look at the types of stimulants that we are introducing into our diets. Oh, this one's a tough one. So a few months ago, probably almost a year ago now, I cut out caffeine. Caffeine is the first stimulant that comes to mind when we think of just everyday drugs or everyday stimulants that we use pretty usually. This is something that is an upper. And I had a huge mindset shift that I had to do for myself in order to get here, because it's so widely accepted and it was such a big part of my upbringing and some great memories. I remember waiting for my sister to get here on Christmas Eve and having a cup of coffee, having a pot of coffee ready for her. When she came in, it was cold, and it was just my favorite thing is having a great conversation over coffee. Or, we use coffee to get us through our days. So we have this mindset of, I am not productive enough, or I cannot be productive enough unless I have my coffee first. And that's nuts, because I just heard this quote that said, your perfectionism benefits everybody but you. Who is this coffee truly benefiting? If I have to drink a stimulant in the mornings every morning so that I can be acceptable in my productivity for somebody else, that's kind of self-abandoning behavior. I do not want that type of energy in my life any longer. I don't want to have to hustle and rush through and hype myself up to be a version of myself that's acceptable to somebody else. And that's really what I was doing with coffee. So on one hand, there's these really beautiful memories that I have of using the stimulant to stay up with my sisters and connect with my friends and share life together. And on the other hand, I was really using it to betray my body, to abandon myself in benefit of somebody else's ideal productivity. And then I heard, stimulants, having this amount of stimulant can actually be a precursor to anxiety. So it was something that I wanted to look into, and so I quit it. I stopped using stimulants in the form of caffeine, in my diet. That meant green tea, black tea, anything that had caffeine, I ended up completely cutting out. And here's what happened for me. I had headaches and I had low energy, and I got through that part of things and I was okay. And then a couple months later, I was like, oh man, I really want a cup of coffee with my dad. So I was like, what could it hurt? And I had a cup of coffee and it went fine. And I felt, great, maybe I could add this in at some point. But then later that night, I had this overwhelming sense of worry, oh my gosh, I'm just about to get a puppy, and why would I do that? And what did I ever think that I was going to be able to do? And wow, I do not have enough clients, and how did I ever think I was going to make this entrepreneurship journey work? I am not cut out for this. This is too hard. I am not capable. I cannot do this. And I thought, man, I haven't felt that kind of I can't in a long time. Probably the last time I felt like that was the last time I had caffeine. And that was really what it clicked for me. This is not healthy for me. I don't know if that's how it feels for you. And you won't know if that's how it feels for you unless you try it out. So the first thing that I'm recommending that you cut out is caffeine. That's the major stimulant that we use so often. We overuse it. Think about what problem is that solving in your life? And is it actually solving a problem for you or for somebody else? And how does that sit with you once you recognize that it might not be in your best interest to be continuing to fill your body with this upper for somebody else's benefit? The next thing that is important to consider when cutting out foods for the reason of anxiety and for managing and tolerating your feelings is sugar. And that's because, you've guessed it, it's a stimulant. So I'm not talking about natural sugars, and I'm not talking about fruit, but I am talking about processed, refined sugars. Here's why. The same reasons why caffeine and sugar are on this list are the same reasons why we added in prebiotic and probiotic foods for the what to eat to help with anxiety video before this. Because it really is a gut disruptor. And anytime you have an unsatisfied gut or a disrupted gut, especially the microbiome, you have anxiety. It's that second brain is there in our stomach. And so when we feel unwell in our gut, we end up feeling a little unwell in our brain also. That includes inflammation and brain fog for any types of extra refined added sugars. Also, when we eat those types of sugars, we end up having a large glucose spike. If you look at the glycemic index of what you eat, our blood sugar goes up. And in order for us to mitigate that or use that, we have to release a hormone to bring all of that blood sugar, the free floating sugar from our bloodstream into either fat cells or muscle cells, depending on what you're using it for. So when we have high sugar content foods, we have a hormone response. And so having a fluctuating hormone response will definitely affect your mood stabilizers, and how you can cope with hard feelings. That's why sugar is on the list. Sugar was easier for me to get rid of than coffee, because when I have sugar, I notice it in my body. It hurts me. I have joint pain, I have residual Lyme disease, and so when I have extra sugar, I do have inflammation in my right hip and my right knee, and it kills. So I can really see the benefits. I can feel the benefits from having too much sugar or cutting sugar out. And so it was easier for me to cut out sugar. Coffee is a harder one to cut out because it's just purely mental for me. But once I had that experience of having extreme anxiety resurgence after just a half a cup of coffee 3 months in, I knew that this was something that was really important for me to continue doing. Okay, number 3. The third thing to consider when we're talking about foods to avoid or cut out or play with, and really consider, because this is your journey. It doesn't matter if I want to do it or if I like it or if it works for me. It depends on if it works for you. So try this one out, is seed oils. Seed oils are in everything. Oh my goodness. You're going to be really surprised when you start to look at the backs of your labels and you recognize that soy lecithin is in everything, or major seed oils like cottonseed or grapeseed or sesame seed oils are in a lot of our foods. I'm gonna drop a couple links for you in the show notes because I want you to just consider how these are made. This is tiny, tiny, tiny little seeds that have been processed, compressed, and expelled of oil, and now this oil is being used in foods in amounts that are insane. This is one of the major things that have changed in our diet in the last 50 to 100 years. Prior to that, we didn't have a lot of heart disease. We didn't have a lot of obesity. We didn't have a lot of mental health illness. We had some, but not to the amount that we have now. And one big difference is that we've introduced a ton of seed oils. 200 to 1,000 times more seed oils in our current diet than prior. There's something there. Again, this is something that is a gut toxin, so it makes us feel unwell, and it's a hormone receptor imbalance. So these things in our bodies actually inhibit our hormones from being able to connect with the receptor. So our hormones change. This is a hormone inhibitor if we eat too many canola oils, vegetable oils, and seed oils. So those are the first 3 things. If you're thinking about what kind of changes can I do in my diet to reduce my anxiety preemptively, I would say start with your caffeine intake. Consider your sugar intake, so any refined processed sugars. And then the harder one is looking at those seed oils. So now that you've heard me talk about major food changes that you would probably have to make in order to respect yourself well, you might be feeling a couple of things. You might be like me and you might be like, my anxiety is not that bad. It's not so bad that I have to cut out like whole food groups. It's definitely not bad enough that I need to cut out coffee. Well, consider this. If you have in your day ever thought, man, I wish I would have done that a little differently. If you have regret or remorse or judgment on your actions at all in your day, you might be behaving from an underlying source of anxiety. And if that's the case, it's worth a look. It's worth a choice, different choice in your food choices to set yourself up for more peace and ease in your choices and behavior. Oftentimes, when we act from a place of anxiety, we do it before we really think out what it is we want to be doing. We're not really conscious of the behavior until after the fact, and then we feel all of these judgments on it. That's anxiety. So if you are even feeling 1 or 2 or 3 times during the day, man, I wish I would have done that a little bit differently, cutting out some stimulants in your diet could really help you. And stimulants aren't just what we eat, it's also what we're exposed to. So it's not just about food. The next video is going to be about stimulation in mass media, social media, and how that's affecting our anxiety as well. So take a look at that one next. Also, these 3 foods are not the only foods that do change or affect our mood. There are some foods that depress our nervous system instead of elevate it, and you're not going to want to miss that. We're going to talk a little bit about what foods to avoid if you're struggling with depression as well. That's a little bit of a different topic, worth a look if you have any of those symptoms.